Hi everyone, it's Randy M here again, and it's been a while since I made a video. I apologize for that, but we've just been really busy taking some time off and enjoying some family time. We actually saw a movie the other night when we were up in Branson, Missouri. A movie was called The Accountant, and that really is a good movie. I'd recommend it to ones who are interested in that sort of thing, that sort of movie. I could relate to it myself because, well, the movie was about a young man that as a boy, well, he grew up with this, I don't know what you'd call it, some kind of compulsive disorder. He had, I don't know if it's a form of some kind of something that affected him mentally. As a child, he would always he was compulsive with finishing things. They showed him with a puzzle, and he got it all done but one piece, and he just couldn't. I'm not giving anything away. This is probably in the movie trailers anyway. But he had to get that one piece, and so it's kind of like he's kind of like that in the Rain Man, where some may have autism, but different degrees or different names. I don't know what names they may call what he had. They mentioned it there in the movie, but I've forgotten the name. But it made him unique. He was able actually to grow up and lead a very productive life. He was a genius of a man. He put his skills and it's kind of a sad movie in a way because the type of personality he had, it made it hard to reach out and to have close ones, loved ones, have relationships with people. But anyway, he worked at his job and he was very good at it, but he had that compulsive disorder. And that's as I was a kid growing up, matter of fact, my mom told my wife, you better hide all your tweezers and stuff from him because Randy will take that and turn them into tools. See, I had this compulsive disorder, not to make sure everything was finished, but as mainly to fix anything. And she'd warn my wife, yeah, Randy, he would tear apart my sewing machine just to see how it all worked. And that's true. I confess I did things like that. And throughout my life, I was just well, that's why Watchtower probably called me a bulldog to one of the persons that they interrogated. And because I'm just the type that something bothers me, I've one-track mind. I want to just work at it until I get a solution or a fix for it. And I've had people though tell me about my YouTube channels, about things about my daughter. Well, not necessarily about my daughter, but me trying to, uh, I guess, fix the problem. Why don't you just forget about it? It's it's not worth it. Well, I want to say my daughter's worth it. Many of your family members are worth it too. And so, I diligently never, it's I always think of, well, what can I do? What can I do? And there may not be anything I can do, but I'm very happy to announce that I found, thanks to our friend George, who posted something up and he told me about it personally. He's about on the subject of cognitive dissonance. He said, actually, cognitive dissonance is a term we are all so familiar with, but can it be that Jehovah's Witnesses have a combination of something else with cognitive dissonance? Here's one paragraph of an article that he ran across there. He says, and let me read this paragraph. It says, as you might imagine, combination of Stockholm syndrome and cognitive dissonance may also be active when our loved one is involved in cults, unusual religions, and other groups. In some situations, the abuser and the controller is actually a group or organization. Victims are punished if they are viewed as disloyal to the group. While this article deals with individual relationships, the family guidelines may be helpful in controlling group situations. I found it very helpful, and I hope some of you will too. I'd like to go over this article. It's by a doctor, by a psychiatrist, psychologist. I'm not sure what his actual title is. I'll put his website and everything in the description. One other paragraph before I get into the discussion, and I'll give my editorial. I'll stop and say how I see such similarities too. But the other paragraph he says is under this topic, combining two unhealthy conditions. The combination of Stockholm syndrome and cognitive dissonance produces a victim who firmly believes the relationship is not only acceptable, but also desperately needed for their survival. The victim feels that they would mentally collapse if the relationship ended. So that that sounds so familiar. That, like I say, it's a lot about personal relationships with, a wife that's in a situation where her husband beats her. But it could be anything else, as mentioned here, even a cult or an organization. This guy's name, he's a clinical psychologist. His name's Dr. Joseph M. Carver. And the article I'm reading from, it says, Love and Stockholm Syndrome, the Mystery of Loving an Abuser. And it really benefited me, because it reinforced in my mind that our daughter still loves us. And it showed me some ways that I can continue be putting out there, so that we're there to help her when she is at the point she needs to get that help, if she wants the help. It's got to be the person wanting it themselves. And we want, throughout the article, it explains how we need to, be there for them, let them know we're there for them. We're not going to be judgmental, first of all, to ones that do wake up or decide they won't help, or like my daughter Alicia. We went through some of these same feelings. Many of us went through the exact same thing. So don't feel that we're going to throw an "I told you so" or a guilt trip or anything, because that's not the case. But I also like to ask that if any mutual friends are out there that are mutual friends with my daughter, if they could help relay what's in this video, what's in this article, even, if you don't do anything but just cut and paste or give her, or even let them know that we're making videos and that we're telling her how much we love her, and that in the past, we're not trying to get her to leave an organization if that's not what she wants, or to leave her husband. We just want to have a relationship, a healthy family relationship that should be normal. And we'd be willing even to just talk on just family matters, of nothing else. But anyway, I'm going to go over this now. It's fairly lengthy, so hopefully you folks will have time to listen. If not, maybe pick up bits and pieces and come back to it. But he starts off, he says, people are often amazed at their own psychological conditions and reactions. Those with depressions are stunned when they remember that they've thought of killing themselves. Parents recovering from severe psychiatric disturbances are often shocked as they remember their symptoms and behavior during the episode. A patient with bipolar disorder recently told me, "I can't believe I thought that I could ever change the weather with mental telepathy." Well, a common reaction is, "I can't believe I did that." In clinical practice, some of the most surprised and shocked individuals are those who have been involved in controlling and abusive relationships. When the relationship ends, they offer comments such as, "I know what he's done to me, but I still love him. I don't know why, but I want him back." Or, "I know it sounds crazy, but I miss her." Recently, I just heard, "This doesn't make sense. He's got a new girlfriend and he's abusing her too, but I'm jealous." Friends and relatives are even more amazed and shocked when they hear these comments or witness their loved one returning to an abusive relationship. While the situation doesn't make sense from a social standpoint, does it make sense from a psychological viewpoint? The answer is yes. And again, this is relationship, but you can still compare it to a group or an organization. Why some, actually leave and then they go back. Our friend Barbara Anderson told us years ago she's seen that many times, and I couldn't believe it, but now I've seen it myself. But anyway, back to the article. And this is where it really gets into defining how this term got started, Stockholm Syndrome. It says, on August 23rd, 1973, two machine gun carrying criminals entered into a bank in Stockholm, Sweden. Blasting their guns, one prisoner escaping named John Eric Olsen announced to the terrified bank employees, "The party has just begun." Well, the two bank robbers held 4 hostages, 3 women and 1 man, for the next 131 hours. The hostages were strapped with dynamite and held in a bank vault until finally rescued on August the 28th. After the rescue, the hostages exhibited a shocking attitude, considering the way that they were threatened, abused, and feared for their lives over 5 days. In their media interviews, it was made clear that they supported their captors and actually feared law enforcement personnel who came to their rescue. The hostages had begun to feel the captors were actually protecting them from the police. One woman later became engaged to one of the criminals, and another developed a legal defense fund to aid in their criminal defense fees. Clearly, the hostages had bonded emotionally with their captors. While the psychological condition in hostage situation has become known as the Stockholm Syndrome due to the publicity, the emotional bonding with captors was a familiar story in psychology. It had been recognized in many years before and was found in studies of other hostage, prisoner, or abusive situations, such as abusive children, battered or abused women, prisoners of war, cult members, incest victims, criminal hostage situations, concentration prisoners, controlling or intimidating relationships. So several of those really stuck out at me. Cult members, incest victims. Anyway, moving on. In the final analysis, emotional bonding with an abuser is actually a strategy for survival of victims in abuse and intimidation. So that's what stood out to me. It's a strategy for survival. Anyway, the Stockholm Syndrome reaction in hostage and or abuse situation is so well recognized at this time that police hostage negotiators no longer view it as unusual. In fact, it's often encouraged in crime situations as it improves the chances of survival of the hostages. But on the downside, it also assures that the hostages experiencing Stockholm Syndrome will not be very cooperative during the rescue or criminal prosecution. Local law enforcement personnel have long recognized this syndrome with battered women who fail to press charges, bail their battering husband or boyfriend out of jail, and even physically attack police officers when they arrive to rescue them from a violent assault. That reminds me, I remember years ago I had a real good friend. I still have him as a good friend. He's a pioneer. And Eddie, he's been pioneering since like 1958. And he said that he come out in the field service on the street. This man was beating this woman, and he went to try to pull him off. And that's what he did. Went over there to help her, pull him off. And what did the woman do? She pulled out a knife after Eddie. So yeah, it's been going on a long time. Stockholm Syndrome can also be found in family, romantic, and interpersonal relationship. The abuser may be a husband or a wife, a boyfriend or a girlfriend, a father or mother, or any other role which the abuser is in a position of control and authority. It's important to understand the components of Stockholm Syndrome as they relate to abusive and controlling relationships. Once the syndrome is understood, it's easier to understand why victims support, love, and even defend their abusers and controllers. Every syndrome has symptoms or behaviors, and Stockholm Syndrome is no exception. While a clear-cut list has not been established due to varying opinions by researchers and experts, several of the following features will be present. 1. They list positive feelings by the victim toward the abuser or controller. Negative feelings by the victim toward family, friends, or authorities trying to rescue or support them to win their release. Support of the abuser's reasons and behaviors. Positive feelings by the abuser toward the victim. Supportive behaviors by the victim, at times helping the abuser. Inability to engage in behaviors that may assist in their release and detachment. Stockholm Syndrome doesn't occur in every hostage or abusive situation. In another bank robbery involving hostages, after terrorizing patrons and employees for many hours, a police sharpshooter shot and wounded the terrorizing bank robber. After he hit the floor, 2 women picked him up and physically held him up to the window for another shot. As you can see, the length of time one is exposed to the abuse or control or other factors are certainly involved. And I can attest to that being being in an organization for over 50 years. It takes time the longer you're in. Anyway, it's been found that 4 situations or conditions are present that serve as a foundation for the development of Stockholm Syndrome. These 4 situations can be found in hostage, severe abuse, and abusive relationships. And here they are. 1, the presence of a perceived threat to one's physical or psychological survival and the belief that the abuser would carry out that threat. So a threat to one, I mean, so many are afraid the threat, think of that being disfellowshipped, shunned, or even being killed at Armageddon. See, I mean, that's one of them right there. 2, the presence of a perceived small kindness from the abuser to the victim. Small kindness, you mean kind of like giving them positions of authority from mic handler, ministerial servant, literature servant, elder, circuit overseer, accountant. Well, third one here, isolation from perspectives other than those of the abuser. You mean like we can't read anything else about the Bible, any other person's religious views, unless it comes from Watchtower? Now, number 4, and of course, you guys recognize that I'm adding this. I'm adding my editorial in between these 4 things. But number 4, the perceived inability to escape the situation. So, by considering each situation, we can understand how Stockholm Syndrome develops in romantic relationships as well as criminal hostage situations. Looking at each situation, perceived threat to one's physical, psychological survival. The perception of threat can be formed by a direct, indirect, or witness methods. Criminal or antisocial partners can directly threaten your life or the life of friends and family. Their history of violence leads us to believe that the captor-controller will carry out the threat in a direct manner if we fail to comply with their demands. The abuser assures us that only our cooperation keeps our loved ones safe. I was threatened that if I didn't drop my claim that I was even keeping private at the time, that I was going to be disfellowshipped and lose all my friends and family. And it is quite a shock to be threatened that way by an abuser. And this was an elder, as you've seen in my other videos, Steve Simpson, there in Odessa, Texas. But anyway, back to the article, indirectly the abuser or the controller offers subtle threats that you will never leave them or have another partner, reminding you that people in the past have paid dearly for not following their wishes. Hints are often offered such as, I know people who can make others disappear. See, I was told, if you all go back and watch the video, we'll have witnesses come against you that you've done something wrong. Well, that was the threats made to me, see. But anyway, indirect threats can come from the stories told by the abusers or controller, how they obtain revenge on those who have crossed them in the past. These stories of revenge are told to remind the victim that revenge is possible if they leave. How many times do they put in there in numbers that how many they disfellowship every year? Witnessing violence or aggression is also a perceived threat. Witnessing a violent temper directed at a television set, others on the highway, or a third party clearly sends us the message that we could be the next target of violence. Witnessing the thoughts and attitudes of the abuser, controller is threatening and intimidating, knowing that we will be the target of those thoughts in the future. Now, the small kindness perception. This is where what got really interesting in here. In threatening and survival situations, we look for evidence of hope, a small sign that the situation may improve. When an abuser controller shows the victim some small kindness, even though it's to the abuser's benefit as well, the victim interprets that small kindness as a positive trait of the captor. In criminal war hostage situations, letting the victim live is often enough. Small behaviors such as allowing a bathroom visit or providing food and water are enough to strengthen the Stockholm Syndrome in criminal hostage situations or events. So, I can tell you how I've seen it recently. The organization February article where it looks like a small kindness. They're coming out, Watchtower, admitting that their men, their governing body, are neither infallible or they inspired. They've made mistakes in the past. See, it's so many of our friends that are still current Jehovah's Witnesses are saying, yeah, they're going to change. Jehovah's going to straighten it out in his due time. The light will get better. He'll make it right. He'll fix it. He'll fix it. And that's what they were doing by publishing such. They're still telling you what, but you still need to show your loyalty by following, even if we could be wrong. So see the psychological game that Watchtower is playing, and their small kindness of putting something out there that those of us that have already come out, we thought, my God, how can anybody not can still be blindly following them? But believe me, those that have this syndrome, it's just going to help strengthen their syndrome. They're going to be this Stockholm syndrome. They're going to be thinking, yeah, they're going to fix it. They're going to fix everything. New light will be, and the teachings will be right. All the overlapping generations, everything will be fixed in the future because now they're admitting it. That's a good step. That's what those with the Stockholm syndrome will be saying. In relationships with abusers, a birthday card, a gift usually provided after a period of abuse, or a special treat are interpreted as not only positive, but evidence that the abuser is not all bad and may at times correct his or her behavior. See, we're not all bad. We admit we're not inspired. So again, are they giving this indication that they're going to correct their horrible behavior? Abusers and controllers are often given positive credit for not abusing their partner, when the partner would have normally been subjected to verbal or physical abuse in a certain situation. An aggressive and jealous partner may normally become intimidating or abusive in certain social situations, as when an opposite-sex co-worker waves in the crowd. After seeing the wave, the victim expects to be verbally battered, and when it doesn't happen, that small kindness is interpreted as a positive sign. See? Jehovah's Witness may go talk to their disfellowshipped son or daughter, and nothing happens to them. That's a positive sign, See, they're being good to me. My elders love me. That's what one of our Jehovah's Witness friends recently told us. Anyway, similar to the small kindness perception is the perception of a soft side. During the relationship, the abuser or controller may share information about their past, how they were mistreated, abused, neglected, and wronged. The victim begins to feel the abuser controller may be capable of fixing their behavior, or worse yet, that they, that is the abuser, may also have been a victim. Sympathy may develop toward the abuser, and we often hear the victim of Stockholm Syndrome defending their abuser with, I know he fractured my jaw and my ribs, but he's troubled. He had a rough childhood. Losers and abusers may admit that they need psychiatric help or acknowledge that they're mentally disturbed. However, it's almost always after they've already abused or intimidated the victim. The admission is a way of denying responsibility for the abuse. Did you catch that? The admission is a way of denying the responsibility for the abuse. So February 7, 2017 article is actually they're admitting that what they've done has been incorrect organizational procedure. And what is it? It's a way of them denying responsibility for the abuse. In truth, personality disorders and criminals have learned over the years that personal responsibility for their violent, abusive behaviors can be minimized and even denied by blaming their bad upbringing, abuse as a child, and now video games. One murderer blamed his crime on eating too much junk food, now known as the Twinkie defense. While it may be true that the abuser and the controller had a difficult upbringing, showing sympathy for his or her history produces no change in their behavior and, in fact, prolongs the length of time that you will be abused. While sad stories are always included in their apologies, after the abusive controlling event, their behavior never changes. Keep in mind, once you become hardened to the sad stories, they will simply try another approach. I know of no victim of abusive crime who's ever heard the abuser say, I'm beating, or robbing, mugging, etc. I'm doing these things to you because my mom hated me. Now, here's the next subheading, isolation from perspectives other than those of the captor. In abusive and controlling relationships, the victim has a sense that they're always walking on eggshells, fearful of saying or doing anything that might prompt a violent or intimidating outburst. For their survival, they begin to see the world through the abuser's perspective. The Jehovah's Witnesses, do you feel, you got to be careful what you say around certain elders? You don't want to do anything that gets you in hot water and in trouble. They begin to fix things that might prompt an outburst, act in ways that makes the abuser happy, or avoid aspects of their own life that may prompt a problem. If we only have $1 in our pocket, then most of our decisions become financial decisions. If our partner is an abuser or controller, then the majority of our decisions are based on our perception of the abuser's potential reaction. When we become preoccupied with the needs, desires, and habits of the abuser and controller, we become preoccupied. So, taking the abuser's perspective as a survival technique can become so intense that the victim actually develops anger toward those trying to help him. The abuser is already angry and resentful toward anyone who would provide the victim support, typically using multiple methods and manipulations to isolate the victim from others. Any contact the victim has with supportive people in the community is met with accusations, threats, and/or violent outbursts. Victims then turn on their family. Fearing family contact will cause additional violence and abuse in the home. At this point, victims curse their parents and friends, tell them not to call and stop interfering, and break off communications with others. See, that's what happened, friends, with our daughter. She broke off communications with all of her family. Her mom, me, her dad, her 2 sisters, her aunt and uncle. She just, broke it all off. Agreeing with the abuser controller, supportive others are now viewed as causing trouble and must be avoided. Many victims threaten their family and friends with restraining orders if they continue to interfere or to try to help the victim in their situation. On the surface, it would appear that they have sided with the abuser controller. In truth, they're trying to minimize contact situations that might make them the target of additional verbal abuse and intimidation. If a casual phone call from mom prompts a 2-hour temper outburst with threats and accusations, the victim quickly realizes it's safer if mom stops calling. If simply telling mom to stop calling doesn't work for his or her own safety, the victim may accuse mom of attempting to ruin the relationship and demand that she stop calling. Or what I might add here, she might just change her phone number and block her mom on Facebook. In severe cases of Stockholm Syndrome in relationships, the victim may have difficulty leaving the abuser and may actually feel the abusive situation is their fault. In law enforcement situations, the victim may actually feel the arrest of their partner for physical abuse or battering is their fault. Some women will allow their children to be removed by child protective agencies rather than give up the relationship with their abuser. As they take the perspective of the abuser, the children are at fault. They complained about the situation. They brought the attention to the authorities to the home, and they put the adult relationship at risk. Sadly, now the children have now become a danger to the victim's safety. For those with Stockholm Syndrome, allowing the children to be removed from the home decreases their victim's stress while providing an emotionally and physically safer environment for the children. Now, the next subtopic is called perceived inability to escape. As a hostage in a bank robbery threatened by criminals with guns, it's easy to understand the perceived inability to escape. In romantic relationships, the belief that one can escape is also very common. Many abusive, controlling relationships feel like till death do us part relationships, locked together by mutual financial issues and assets, mutual intimate knowledge, or legal situations. Here's some common situations. Controlling partners have increased the financial obligation or debt in the relationship to the point that neither party can financially survive on their own. Controllers who sense their partner may be leaving will often purchase a new automobile, later claiming they can't pay alimony or child support due to their large car payments. The legal ending of a relationship, especially a marital relationship, also often creates significant problems. A controller who has an income that's under the table or maintained through legally questionable situations runs the risk of those sources of being investigated, the sources of income being investigated or made public by the divorce or separation. The controller then becomes more agitated about the possible exposure of their business arrangements than the loss of their relationship. The controller often uses extreme threats, including threatening to take the children out of state, threatening to quit their job or business rather than pay alimony support, threatening public exposure of the victim's personal issues, or assuring the victim they will never have a peaceful life due to nonstop harassment. In severe cases, the controller may threaten an action that will undercut the victim's support, such as, "I'll see that you'll lose your job," or "I'll have your automobile burned." Or how about, "I'll see that you won't ever have your children or your grandchildren, or you will be shunned," or those sort of things. Well, controllers often keep the victim locked into the relationship with severe guilt, threatening suicide if the victim leaves. The victim hears, "I'll kill myself in front of the children," or "I'll set myself on fire in the front yard," or "Our children won't have a father or mother if you leave me." In relationships with an abuser or controller, the victim also has experienced a loss of self-esteem, self-confidence, and psychological energy. The victim may feel burned out and too depressed to leave. Additionally, abusers and controllers often create a type of dependency by controlling the finances, placing automobiles, homes in their name, and eliminating any assets or resources a victim may use to leave. In clinical practice, I've heard, "I'd leave, but I can't even get money out of the savings account. I don't know the PIN number." So putting things in their names, isn't that what Watchtower's done now with all the Kingdom Hall property? Are they all put into their name? Something to think about. In the teens and young adults, victims may be attracted to a controlling individual when they feel inexperienced, insecure, and overwhelmed by a change in their life situation. When parents are going through a divorce, a teen may attach to a controlling individual. Feeling the controller may stabilize their life. Freshmen in college may be attracted to controlling individuals who promise them to help them survive living away from home on college campus. In unhealthy relationships, and definitely in Stockholm Syndrome, there is a daily preoccupation with trouble, quotation marks. It says, trouble in any individual, group, situation, comment, casual glance, or cold meal that may produce a temper tantrum or verbal abuse from the controller or abuser. To survive trouble is to be avoided at all cost. The victim must control situations that produce trouble. That may include avoiding family, friends, co-workers, and anyone who may create trouble in the abusive relationship. The victim does not hate family and friends. They're only avoiding trouble. See, that was real comforting to me, because I could tell when I listened to go back and play the recordings of my daughter talking when her mom tried to build back the relationship, that she was just scared to death. She was with another group. She didn't want them to know who she was talking to. She didn't want another group of Jehovah's Witnesses, her husband's family, Jehovah's Witnesses, no doubt. She didn't want to create anything that could cause her trouble at home or in her congregation. But notice this, I'm going to read it again. The victim does not hate family and friends. They're only avoiding trouble. So for you ones that are out there, your loved ones that's Jehovah's Witnesses are shunning you. They may act hateful towards you. But according to this psychologist, their mindset is that they love you, but they're just trying to avoid trouble. It's a survival instinct that's kicking in for them. So keep that. That was very beneficial for me. It helped me a lot. I hope it helps some of y'all. Let me finish reading. It says the victim also cleans the house, calms the children, scans the mail, avoids certain topics, and anticipates every issue of the controller or abuse in an effort to avoid trouble. In this situation, children who are noisy become trouble. Loved ones and friends are sources of trouble for the victim who is attempting to avoid verbal and physical aggression. Stockholm syndrome in relationships is not uncommon. Law enforcement professionals are painfully aware of the situation, making a domestic dispute one of the high-risk calls during work hours. Called by neighbors during a spousal abuse incident, the abuser is passive upon arrival of the police, only to find the abused spouse upset and threatening the officers if the abusive partner is arrested for domestic violence. In truth, the victim knows that the abuser or the controller will retaliate against him or her if 1, they encourage an arrest, or if 2, they offer statements about the abuse or the fight that are deemed disloyal by the abuser, or 3, if they don't bail them out of jail as quickly as possible, and 4, if they don't personally apologize for the situation as though it was their fault. Stockholm syndrome produces an unhealthy bond with the controller and the abuser. It is the reason that many victims continue to support an abuser after the relationship is over. It is also the reason they continue to see the good side of an abuser, of an abused, It is also the reason they continue to see the good side of an abusive individual and appear sympathetic to someone who has mentally and sometimes physically abused them. Is there something else involved is the next topic. In short response, yes. Throughout history, people have found themselves supporting and participating in life situations that range from abusive to bizarre. In talking to these active and willing participants in bad and bizarre situations, it's clear that they have developed feelings and attitudes that support their participation. One way these feelings and thoughts are developed is known as cognitive dissonance. As you can tell, psychologists have large words and phrases for just about everything. Cognitive dissonance explains how and why people change their ideas and opinions to support situations that do not appear to be healthy, positive, or normal. In the theory, an individual seeks to reduce the information or opinions that make him or her uncomfortable. When we have two sets of cognitions, that is, knowledge, opinions, feelings, input from others, that are opposite, the situation becomes emotionally uncomfortable. Even though we might find ourselves in a foolish or difficult situation, few want to admit that fact. Instead, we attempt to reduce the dissonance. The fact that our cognitions don't match, agree, or make sense when combined. Cognitive dissonance can be reduced by adding new cognitions, adding new thoughts and attitudes. Some examples. Heavy smokers know smoking causes lung cancer and multiple health risks. To continue smoking, the smoker changes his cognitions, thoughts or feelings, such as 1, well, I'm smoking less than 10 years ago, or 2, I'm smoking low tar cigarettes, 3, those statistics are just made up by cancer industry conspiracy, or 4, something's got to get you anyway. These new cognitions attitudes allow them to keep smoking and actually begin blaming restaurants for being unfair. I can add a fifth one there. I've heard many times, oh, my grandfather, Uncle Joe, whatever, smoked till he was 98. And I just said, wow, imagine that. He could have lived to be 108 if he had maybe not been smoking. But anyway, the third situation or example, it says you might purchase a $40,000 sports vehicle that gets 8 miles to a gallon. You justify the expense and related issues with 1, well, it's great on trips, but then you only take 1 trip per year. Or 2, well, I can use it to haul stuff. You might haul 1 coffee table in 12 months. Or 3, well, you can carry a lot of people in it, but 95% of your trips are just you alone, driver alone only. The third example, it says your husband or boyfriend becomes abusive and assaultive. You can't leave due to the finances, children, or other factors. Though cognitive dissonance, you begin telling yourself, well, he only hits me open-handed. He's had a lot of stress at work. So, what's another example we could give? Well, what are we told? Where else are you going to go? You got to stay with us. Even though we're wrong, we'll get new light. We'll change. We're the best that's out there. We're the cleanest. You're going to hear all of these other things that are put into your mind that simply are not true, but they make you feel better. They make you feel better by staying in that abusive organization. Leon Festinger first coined cognitive dissonance. He had observed a cult in 1956 in which members gave up their homes, incomes, and jobs to work for the cult. This cult believed in messages from outer space that predicted the day the world would end by flood. As cult members and firm believers, they would believe that they would be saved by flying saucers at that appointed time. They gathered and waited to be taken by flying saucers at the specific time. The end of the world came and went. No flood, no flying saucer. Rather than believing that they were foolish after all that personal and emotional investment, they decided that their beliefs had actually just saved the world from the flood, and that they became firmer in their beliefs after the failure of the prophecy. The moral, before I get into the moral, that reminded me so much of the Jehovah's Witnesses Bible students as they were known, thinking that the world was going to end in 1914. But then Jesus going to come back on earth. Well, he's come, now they changed it. He's come back, but he's just invisible. You can't see him. See? So they just reinforced their ideas. Same thing in 1975. But then they come back and made up, we never said 75, which we know that's a lie. I was there. I heard it myself. It's still in print. I've got bound volumes in my library. I can pull out and read their exact words. I know what they said. But yet they're telling people this other story. But anyway, here's the moral of the story. The more you invest with income, job, home, time, effort, etc. In other words, how much of your life? But the more you invest, the stronger your need to justify your position. If we invest $5 in a raffle ticket, we justify losing with, I'll get them the next time. If you invest everything you have, it requires an almost unreasonable and unreasoning belief, an unusual attitude to support and justify that investment. What about investing 50 years of your life? That was my case. Anyway, studies tell us that we are more loyal and committed to something that is difficult, uncomfortable, and even humiliating. The initiation rituals of college fraternities, Marine boot camp, graduate school, all produce loyal and committed individuals. Almost any ordeal creates a bonding experience. Every couple, no matter how mismatched, falls in love in the movies after going through a terrorist takeover, being stalked by a killer, being stranded on an island, or being involved in an alien abduction. Investment and an ordeal are ingredients for strong bonding, even if bonding is unhealthy. No one ever bonds or falls in love by being a member of an automobile club or a music CD club. Struggling to survive on a deserted island, yeah, you bet. Abusive relationships produce a great amount on unhealthy investment in both parties. In many cases, we tend to remain and support the abusive relationship due to our investment in the relationship. Try telling a new Marine that, now since he or she has survived the boot camp, they should now enroll in the National Guard. Several types of investments keep us in bad relationships. Emotional, here lists a whole set, many types. 1, emotional investment. We've invested so many emotions, cried so much, and worried so much that we feel we must see the relationship through to the finish. Social investment. We've got our pride. To avoid social embarrassment and uncomfortable social situations, we remain in the relationship. Family investments. If children are present in the relationship, decisions regarding the relationship are clouded by the status and needs of the children. Financial investment. In many cases, the controlling and abusive partner has created a complex financial situation. Many victims remain in a bad relationship, waiting for a better financial situation to develop that would make their departure and detachment easier. Lifestyle investment. Many controlling or abusive partners use money or a lifestyle as an investment. Victims in this situation may not want to lose their current lifestyle. Intimacy investment. We often invest emotionally and sexual intimacy. Some victims have experienced a destruction of their emotional and or sexual self-esteem in the unhealthy relationship. The abusing partner may threaten to spread rumors or to tell intimate details or secrets. A type of blackmail using intimacy is often found in these situations. In many cases, it's not simply our feelings for an individual that keeps us in an unhealthy relationship. It's often the amount of investment. Relationships are complex, and we often only see the tip of the iceberg in public. For this reason, the most common phrase offered by the victim in defense of their unhealthy relationship is, "Well, you just don't understand." Now, this is under the heading that I read at the beginning, the brief sentence, combining two unhealthy conditions. The combination of Stockholm syndrome and cognitive dissonance produces a victim who firmly believes the relationship is not only acceptable, but also desperately needed for their survival. The victim feels they would mentally collapse if the relationship ended. In long-term relationships, the victims have invested everything and placed all their eggs in one basket. The relationship now decides their level of self-esteem, self-worth, and emotional health. So sad. For reasons described above, the victim feels family and friends are a threat to the relationship and eventually to their personal health and existence. The more family and friends protest the controlling and abusive nature of the relationship, the more the victim develops cognitive dissonance and becomes defensive. At this point, family and friends become victims of the abuse and controlling individual. And I might say, in some cases, the controlling organization. So, friends, many of us are victims ourselves because of an abusive organization. Importantly, both Stockholm syndrome and cognitive dissonance develop on an involuntary basis. The victim does not purposely invent this attitude. Both develop as an attempt to exist and survive in a threatening and controlling environment and relationship. Despite what we might think, our loved one is not in the unhealthy relationship to irritate, embarrass, or drive us to drink. What might have begun as a normal relationship has turned into a controlling and abusive situation. They are trying to survive. So that made me feel better about my daughter. Other ones like Brenda Lee, I know, with your mom, what this is telling me was it started out as maybe normal, and then now she's in it. Now in her mindset, she's a victim, and she was trying to survive. And it's so sad, so sad. And then there's many thousands and more out there that have had this happen to them as well. It says their personality is developing the feelings and thoughts needed to survive the situation and lower their emotional and physical risk. All of us have developed attitudes and feelings that help us accept and survive situations. We have these attitudes and feelings about our jobs, our community, and our other aspects of life. As we have found throughout history, the more dysfunctional the situation, the more dysfunctional our adaptation and thoughts are to survive. The victim is engaged in an attempt to survive and make a relationship work. Once they decide it doesn't work and it can't be fixed, they will need our support as we patiently await their decision to return to a healthy and positive lifestyle. So yes, we can understand it more. What I'm reading from this paragraph is think how we put up with things, other people, other employees, co-workers, bosses, customers, whatever, in our jobs, because we know we have to do it to survive. We have to sometimes put up with stuff we don't like. And that's what they're saying that our loved ones are doing, that's being abused. But now here's the best part. Now we're getting it is going to help us show what we can do to fix it. Remember, I'm always trying to find a fix. I'll spend my whole life like a bulldog to try to, as long as I've got breath in me, to try to find a fix so that we can have a relationship with our daughter again. So the next heading is family and friends of the victim. When a family is confronted with a loved one involved with a loser or a controlling, abusive individual or entity, organization, I'll add in there, it says the situation becomes emotionally painful and socially difficult for the family. While each situation is different, some general guidelines to consider are: your loved one, the victim of the loser abuser, has probably been given a choice, the relationship or the family. This choice is made more difficult by the control and intimidation often present in the abusive controlling relationships. Knowing that choosing the family will result in severe personal and social consequences, the family always comes in second. Keep in mind that the victim knows in their heart that the family will always love them and accept their return whenever the return happens. The second guideline, it says, remember that the more you pressure the victim of the loser abuser, the more you prove their point. Your loved one is being told the family's trying to ruin their wonderful relationship. Pressure in the form of contacts, comments, and communications will be used as evidence against you. An invitation to a Tupperware party is met with, you see, they just want to get you by yourself so they can tell you bad things about me. Increasing your contacts is viewed as putting pressure on their relationship, not being lovingly concerned. The third guideline, it says your contacts with your loved one, no matter how routine and loving, may be met with anger and resentment. This is because each contact may prompt the loser abuser to attack them verbally or emotionally. Imagine getting a 4-hour lecture every time your Aunt Gladys calls. In a short time, you become angry each time she calls, knowing what the contact will produce in your home. The longer Aunt Gladys talks, the longer your lecture becomes. Thus, when Aunt Gladys calls, you want to get her off the phone as quickly as possible. Another guideline here, it says that the 1980 song Hold On Loosely may be the key to a good family and friend approach. Holding on too tight produces more pressure. When the victim is out of the home, it is often best to establish predictable schedule contacts. Well, first of all, I'd like to say that that's true if you were living in the area. In my case, I'm 500 miles away. Calling every Wednesday evening just for a status report or to go over current events is less threatening than random calling during the week. Random calls are always viewed as checking up on us calls. While you may encounter an answering machine, leave a polite and loving message. Importantly, don't discuss the relationship. The controller may be listening, unless the victim brings it up. The goal of these scheduled calls is to maintain conduct. Remind your loved ones that you are always there to help, and to quietly remind the controller that the family and loved ones are nearby and haven't disappeared. Okay, friends, this is where I'm needing your help here a little bit too, because we have no way to contact our daughter. She's changed her phone number and told somebody, I don't know if it's her, probably her through the force of her husband, controlling husband, told her to write us and to tell us not to try to contact her. And you've probably seen that in the video of parents trying to regain their Jehovah's Witness daughter. So my only way to let her know that I love her, that I'm here for her, is through my YouTube videos. And I hope someday she can see this one as well as some other ones. Here's another guideline. It says try to maintain traditional and special contacts with your loved ones, holidays, special occasions, etc. Well, that kind of shows that possibly this psychologist may not know that that won't work for Jehovah's Witnesses, since we're already isolated by an abusive organization that quickly found out, hey, this is one way to isolate them, cut them off from their holidays with their family. Now back to the article. It says keep your contacts short and brief, with no comments that can be used as evidence. Contacts made at traditional times, holidays, birthdays, anniversaries, etc., are not as threatening to a controller or abuser. Contacts that provide information but not questions are also not as threatening. An example might be a simple card reading, just a note to let you know that your brother landed a new job this week. You might see him on a Walmart commercial any day now. Love, Mom and Dad. This approach allows the victim to recognize that the family is there waiting in the wings if needed. It also lessens the lectures and tantrums provided by the loser, as the contacts are on a traditional and expected basis. It's also hard to be angry about a brother's new job without looking ridiculous. Also, don't invent holidays or send a reminder that's on Sigmund Freud's birthday. That's suspicious even in my family. Remember that there are many channels of communications. It's important that we keep a channel open if at all possible. Communication channels might include phone calls, letters, cards, and an email. That's what I'm going to actually send her another. We've sent her gifts before. I'm going to send them another gift for her children. Maybe send them some kites. Scheduled monthly shopping trips or outings are helpful if possible. The goal is to maintain contact. The goal is to maintain contact while your loved one is involved in the controlling abusive relationship. Remember, the goal is contact, not pressure. Don't feel the victim's behavior is against the family or friends. It may be a form of survival or a way of lowering stress. Victims may be very resistive, angry, and even hostile due to the complexity of the relationship with the controller abuser. They may even curse, threaten, and accuse loved ones and friends. The hostile defensiveness is actually self-protection in the relationship, an attempt to avoid trouble. The victim needs to know and feel that they're not rejected because of their behavior. Keep in mind that they are painfully aware of their situation. They know they're being treated badly and or controlled by their partner. Well, we could say or organization. But we knew it. We knew that it was badly, but we still put up with it, didn't we? So frequent reminders of this will only make them want less contact. We naturally avoid people who remind us of things or situations that are emotionally painful. See, that kind of reminds me of Stephen Hassan's book. He said, don't be trying to prove the doctrine's wrong, but just keep showing them love. That's what they need, is they need love. Victims may slightly open the door and provide information about their relationship or hint that they may be considered leaving. Well, when the door's open, don't jump through with the Marines behind you. Listen and simply offer support, such as, well, you know your family's behind any decision you need to make and at any time that you want to make it. They may be exploring what support's available, but may not be ready to call in the troops just yet. Many victims use an exit plan that may take months or even years to complete. They may be gathering information at this point and are not yet ready for an exit. We can get messages to people in two ways: the pipeline and the grapevine. The pipeline is face-to-face, telling the person directly. This seldom happens in loser situations, as controllers and abusers monitor and control contacts with others. That's how it is with my daughter. The only phone number we have is only his phone number. He took hers away. We have no contact with her. He's 500 miles away, so we don't have the pipeline. We only have the grapevine. Here it says, however, the grapevine is still open. When we use the grapevine, we send a message to our loved one through another person. That's why I'm hoping that friends, if any of you are mutual friends with Alicia, please get the message to her that we love her. Victims of controlling and abusive individuals are often allowed to maintain a relationship with a few people, perhaps a sibling or a best friend. We can send our loved one a message through that contact person, a message that voices our understanding and support. We don't send insults like Bill is a jerk or put downs like if he doesn't get out of this relationship, he'll end up crazy. When we send messages of love and support, we send, I hope she or he, the victim that is, knows that the family is concerned and that we love and support them. Comments sent on the grapevine are phrased with the understanding that our loved one will hear them in that manner. Don't talk with the grapevine contact to express anger and threaten to hire a hitman and then try to send a message of loving support. So be careful what and how the message is provided. The grapevine contact can often get messages to the victim that when we can't. It's another way of letting them know that we're supporting them, just waiting to help if and when needed. Each situation is different. The family may need to seek counseling support in the community. A family consultation with a mental health professional or attorney may be helpful if the situation seems legally complex or there is a significant danger of harm. As relatives or friends of a victim involved with a controller or abuser, our normal reaction is to consider dramatic action. We become angry and resentful and aggressive at times. Our mind fills with a variety of plans that often range from rescue and kidnapping to ambushing the controller or abuser with a ball bat. A rule of thumb is that any aggression toward the controller or abuser will result in additional difficulties for your loved one. So let's repeat that if we try to do something that what we feel like we have to do, it can make it worse for our loved one. Try to remain calm and await an opportunity to show your love and support when your loved one needs it. In some cases, as in teenagers and young adults, the family may still provide some financial insurance or other support. When we receive angry responses to our phone calls, our anger and resentment tells us to cut off their support. I've heard, well, if she's going to date that jerk, it's not going to be in the car that I'm paying for. Or if he's choosing that woman over his family, he can drop out of college and flip hamburgers. Withdrawing financial support only makes your loved one more dependent upon the controller and abuser. Remember, if we're aggressive by threatening, withdrawing support, or pressuring, we become the threatening force, not the controller and abuser. It actually moves the victim into the support of the controller. Sadly, the more of an ordeal they experience, the more bonding takes place, as noted in Stockholm Syndrome and cognitive dissonance. As you might imagine, the combination of Stockholm Syndrome and cognitive dissonance may also be active when our loved one is involved in cults, unusual religions, and other groups. In some situations, the abuser and controller is actually a group or organization. Victims are punished if they're viewed as disloyal to the group. While this article deals with individual relationships, the family guidelines may be helpful in controlling group situations. Now, here's his final thoughts in summing up. He says, you may be the victim of a controlling and abusive partner seeking an understanding of your feelings and attitudes. You may have a son or daughter or friend currently involved with a controlling and abusive partner looking for ways to understand and help. If a loved one is involved with a loser, a controlling and abusing partner, the long-term outcome is difficult to determine due to the many factors involved. If the relationship is in the dating phase, they may end the relationship on their own. If the relationship has continued for over a year, they may require support and an exit plan before ending the relationship. Marriage and children further complicates the ability to leave the situation. When the victim decides to end the unhappy relationship, it's important that they view loved ones as supportive, loving, and understanding, not a source of pressure, guilt, or aggression. So see, everybody's situation is different. You may have been in that you may have been just studying, about to get baptized into that organization, to vowing to support it instead of God. That may make it easier for you once you find out. But then if you've been in it for years, that could be another story. Or if you've got large family that's in it, then that could be another story. In my case, fortunately, my family is very small, so I didn't have that many, and they fortunately woke up, all except for my one daughter. But some of you friends out there have a large family, so that may make it harder for you to exit. And we understand your loved ones will understand this and know this. Don't think they're going to be throwing aggressive or guilt toward you. Matter of fact, let me get back. This last paragraph, it says, this article is an attempt to understand the complex feelings and attitudes that are as puzzling to the victim as they are to the family and friends. I've outlined recommendations for detaching from a loser or controlling, abusive individual. And here he gives his website. It's www.drjoecarver, with the doctor abbreviated DR, drjoecarver.com. All one word, no hyphens. I'll post that on the description. So he says, I've outlined recommendations for detaching from a loser or abusive, controlling individual, but clearly there are more victims in this situation. It is hoped that this article is helpful to family and friends who worry, cry, and have difficulty understanding the situation of their loved one. It's been said that knowledge is power. Hopefully this knowledge will prove helpful and powerful to victims and their loved ones. Please consider this article as a general guideline. Some recommendations may be appropriate and helpful, while some may not apply to a specific situation. In many cases, we may need additional professional help of a mental health or legal nature. So sort of a disclaimer there at the end. So I hope some of you have benefited from this. I know it's very lengthy, but I felt it was very important, and it would help many as it's helped me. So, Alicia, we love you, and hope to have a next video real soon. The next video that I put up, I think, is going to be beneficial. I hope will be found beneficial by victims, those that may be pursuing litigation. I just, wanted to get it out there now for so long. I've been working on it, wanted to say just the right things. I'm not an eloquent speaker, so it takes a while for me to get the words expressed as I want to. I hope that hopefully that'll be the next video that I have out there, and then I'll see you then. Bye-bye.